The Mecklenburg County election debates are a service of WTVI, Mecklenburg County, and the League of Women Voters of Charlotte-Mecklenburg. The views and opinions expressed in these debates are those of the candidates and do not necessarily represent the views of WTVI, its management, Mecklenburg County, or the League of Women Voters.
PBS Charlotte and the League of Women Voters present Election Debate 2016.
Hello, I'm Danielle Koser with PBS Charlotte. Welcome to the North Carolina House District 103 primary debate, sponsored by PBS Charlotte and the League of Women Voters Charlotte-Mecklenburg. In the next 20 minutes, we'll talk with the two Democratic candidates running in the North Carolina House District 103 race. The League of Women Voters of Charlotte-Mecklenburg provided the questions for the debate. The candidates have not heard these questions in advance. I'll call on the candidates in random order to answer questions. They have between 30 seconds and 1 minute to answer each question, and I will tell you in advance how much time you have to respond to each question. Now, if you'd like to challenge your opponent, just raise up your yellow challenge card, and you'll have 30 seconds to respond. Each candidate has 3 challenges during this debate. There are no opening statements, but we will be making a 30-second closing statement. And now let's meet the Democratic candidates for North Carolina House District 103 race. And the candidates are Noah Lieberman and Rochelle Rivas. For our first question, we'll begin with Mr. Lieberman, and you will both have 30 seconds to answer this question. This question is for both of you. What do you see as your superior qualifications over your opponent in this race?
I think first off, I'd like to say thank you to the League of Women Voters and to WTVI for hosting this debate. I'd say that the quality I'm proudest of in myself is the fact that I'm going out and listening to voters and talking to them. The role of representative is somebody who's supposed to represent the needs and interests of their district. And unlike Bill Brawley, I am going to go out and talk to the members of this district to make sure I am doing what they need. That means reinvesting in public education, bringing high-paying jobs back down to this district, and expanding Medicaid to make sure all North Carolinians have health insurance.
Thank you, Mr. Lieberman. And Ms. Rivas?
Could you repeat the question?
Of course. What do you see as your superior qualifications over your opponent in this race? You have 30 seconds to answer.
Thank you. I wouldn't use the word superior qualifications. I think it is great that Noah has jumped into this, and I think if we have a lot of people that are in a younger stage in their life and into politics, everybody wins. My qualifications are, I own a small company here in Charlotte. We employed 60 people last year. I've had the fortunate opportunity of sitting on 4 different nonprofit boards here in Charlotte that has allowed me to see a lot of the issues on a very micro level. And I wouldn't at all say that my qualifications are superior to Noah's. I would just say that we have 2 great candidates. My experience is I'm older and I've just had a lot more time to be able to process the things that we need to do in a legislative race.
Thank you, Ms. Rivas. Next question. What are the major needs of the people in your district, and what policies would you advocate to meet those needs? We'll start with you, Ms. Rivas.
I think the number one thing on most people's mind right now is education. And I look at education right now as a district and a state, and we have some serious fundamental issues. Particular to District 103, we have education, toll roads, and in certain topics right now that are resonating with all of the state voters. Education is going to be the number one priority for me on the campaign, in addition to toll roads. We have a toll road issue that was voted upon, and the constituents weren't talked to about the impact that could possibly have on them.
And Mr. Lieberman?
I would have to agree that education is the number one issue for the people of this district. We need a comprehensive solution, something that people on both sides of the aisle can get behind, giving the teachers the resources they need to succeed, but also the pay they deserve for all the work they put in. But we need to make sure that we focus on public education first. Right now, private school waivers and charter school allowances are robbing the children in our public school system of the funding they need to get ahead. What we need to do is make sure that these charter schools are not bullying our districts and keeping them from getting what they deserve.
Thank you, Mr. Lieberman. And for this next question, you will both have 30 seconds to respond. We'll start with you, Mr. Lieberman. How can a minority party representative influence a supermajority-controlled legislature?
I think the thing to talk about here is that the issues I'm running on go beyond left and right. There are issues like education, like jobs, that people across the aisle can agree on. We've seen the policies of the Republican majority in Raleigh so far have not been beneficial to the state. We're slow to recover from the recession, and our education is falling behind. I think that we can work across the aisle and form coalitions to solve the biggest problems facing our district and our state.
Thank you, Mr. Lieberman. And Ms. Rivas?
I look at it as an opportunity to leverage 25 years experience of working across business organizations, nonprofit work, and policymakers to identify people not by Democrat, Republican, but by people who want to make a difference. And I think there's more commonality right now on change than there was and has been in the past. And I think I've been in situations where I've been on an opposing side of somebody and been the minority. And I think working collaboratively with individuals is what is going to make the difference in this race.
Again, for this next question, you'll both have 30 seconds to respond. We'll start with you, Ms. Rivas. The question is, how can the Mecklenburg delegation work together to more effectively represent the county?
That goes back to my last response. I think we need to stop with political lines and political parties. We are getting polarized as a country around division. And unfortunately, politics has become something that is not about the issues and more about attacking people. So starting to break down walls and having people work together at the most micro level, from the citizen to civic leaders to corporations, and get on the same policy page with a lot of these large issues. Not everybody's always going to agree every time, but there's some large issues that can be tackled to stop some of these things.
Thank you. And Mr. Lieberman?
I think it goes back to the focus of my campaign, which is bringing your voice to Raleigh. Right now, we have a representative who's following his party lines rather than the needs of the district. Take the toll roads, for example, on I-77. This is a contract which should have never been approved if he was listening to the voice of the people. When we win races like this one, we're going to send a message that you can't ignore the people of your district, and all of Mecklenburg, and I think all of the state, will rally around the common sense solutions that will solve our biggest problems.
Thank you. For this next question, again, 30 seconds for each of you to respond. We'll start with you, Mr. Lieberman. Does it concern you that North Carolina hit a 5-year high in teacher turnover this year, and that enrollment in colleges and universities has significantly declined? And what can be done to reverse this trend?
Absolutely. I think it's one of the most critical issues we have to solve, not only because education impacts our children and our families, but because it's the key to bringing more businesses back down to the Charlotte area and to the state. I think what we have to do is raise our teacher pay. We are currently $10,000 below the median teacher salary in North Carolina. We need to make sure that we raise up and stay competitive in the national marketplace to attract good teachers and to keep our education system the best in the South.
Thank you, Mr. Lieberman. And Ms. Rivas?
It absolutely concerns me. I think when you look at education in totality, it is the gateway to so many different things. From an opportunity perspective, it helps close the gap in upward mobility in every study that has ever been done around education. I agree to the fact that number one is teacher pay. We have teachers that can go a minimum of 15 miles across the border and make a significant pay increase. That is a problem, and it's a problem that can be immediately addressed by reprioritizing the budget in Raleigh.
Thank you. For this next question, you will both have 1 minute to answer. Ms. Rivas, we'll start with you. There have been many instances of the legislature imposing its will regarding policies normally left to cities and counties, such as local redistricting, airport control, and others. Do you agree with state control of local matters? If not, how do you propose to change that?
I think local matters, and I think honestly it depends a lot on the issue. I think if it's an issue that impacts on a state level, then I think it needs to be looked at. But at the genesis of every issue and every policy, it starts with people. It starts with voters, and it starts with constituents. And I think when we lose track of that and take a top-down proposal to solving issues, it's never going to be about whether it's state, local, or federal. We absolutely have got to get back to grassroots of voters speaking about the issues that are important to them.
Thank you. And Mr. Lieberman?
I think that it's important that state and local governments work together to solve the issues that affect us on both a local and statewide level. But I think you don't need to look any further than Flint, Michigan to see the dangers of allowing the state government to completely override the will of the people in local areas. We have to make sure that we keep our local government strong and that the state government is there to help them rather than hinder them.
Thank you, Mr. Lieberman. For this next question, you'll each have 30 seconds to answer, and we will start with you, Mr. Lieberman. North Carolina's population is increasing and social needs are growing, but state spending as a part of the state economy is below a 45-year average. How can the state address its pressing needs?
I think the thing we have to do is make sure that we're putting the money into the problems that need to be solved. Right now, our state's budget and tax code prioritize the wealthy, giving new tax breaks to people buying private jets and yachts while getting rid of the state's earned income tax credit that so many working class families relied on. If we reprioritize our tax system, making it fair and progressive, we will have the money to address our needs on education, infrastructure, and bringing more jobs to the people of this state.
Thank you. Ms. Rivas?
I as well agree that there is a complete overhaul needed in prioritizing the budget. I think when you look at some of the issues that are facing North Carolinians today, obviously there is tax incentives for corporations. I am by my day job a creator of jobs. That's what I do day in and day out. We have very little focus on small business. Small business creates 75% of jobs in this country. We have a huge opportunity to incentivize small companies to bring jobs to North Carolina, to employ people in North Carolina, and it's a completely overlooked place right now.
Now, this next question is simply a yes or no question, and we're going to start with you, Ms. Rivas. The question is, benefits to help struggling working families, such as the Earned Income Tax Credit, food stamps, and child care subsidies have been cut or repealed. At the same time, many jobs just don't pay enough to support a family. Would you support a living wage initiative? Yes or no?
Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Lieberman?
Absolutely. We have to raise the minimum wage.
In this next question, you'll both have 30 seconds. Charter schools operate with tax money, as do the public schools, but are not subject to same standards of accountability and transparency. Does that need to change? If so, what do you propose to do that in the legislature? We'll start with you, Mr. Lieberman.
Charter schools have to be addressed because they are beginning to take money away from the students who need them most in our public school system. And it's not just out of the general budget of our public schools. These charter schools also take money out of the transportation and food budgets of these schools, even though they don't provide buses or lunch to their students. These charter schools are literally stealing the lunch money away from our children, and we're doing nothing about it. We have to fight back and make sure that children across the state have access to the phenomenal education I was given access to.
Thank you, Mr. Lieberman. Ms. Rivas?
I think if I heard the question correctly, should there be oversight to charter schools? And the answer is absolutely the same oversight should be in place as there is for any school. I think the larger issue is that every child in North Carolina deserves to have the best education, regardless of where they live, regardless of whether it's a charter school, regardless of whether it's a public school. The answer is absolutely they need to have oversight to the same degree and scrutiny as any public institution.
Thank you. Now for this next question, you'll both have 30 seconds to respond. The next question is, North Carolina has different standards for drinking water from wells and for public water systems, with different departments issuing regulations. How can you help resolve this possible safety issue, lest we become another Flint, Michigan? We'll start with you, Ms. Rivas.
This is absolutely something that I feel passionately about. We have an obligation as a society and voters and constituents, politicians, corporations, to ensure that our children have fresh drinking water and clean air. This is one of those issues that has been long not addressed and dealt with from an environmental perspective. We absolutely owe that to the kids that live in this state.
Thank you. And Mr. Lieberman?
We have to make sure that people from all communities, be they rich or poor, black or white, have access to the same quality of living across this state. I think we need to make sure that the regulations don't become so tied up that we have people with different qualities of living in rural areas and urban areas. I think the legislature needs to make it a priority to make sure that everybody has the same quality of drinking water, as well as the same quality of schools, infrastructure, and all the other things that we need to live a fruitful life.
Thank you, Mr. Lieberman. This next question. Citizens are very concerned about the dangers of coal ash to public health when the regulating power of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources has been weakened. Is it in the best interest of the public to allow self-policing by Duke Power? Mr. Lieberman, we'll start with you.
I think self-policing works well for small companies that have roots in the community and can be held to standards by their neighbors. But I think what we've seen with the coal ash spill and the follow-up that's happened with Duke Energy is that when a company has enough power in the legislature as they do, they don't see repercussions for their actions. We need to make sure that not only for the sake of the environment, but the sake of the health of our families and children, we are holding these companies accountable for the damage they produce.
Thank you, Mr. Lieberman. Ms. Rivas?
I think any self-policing can be a dangerous thing when you have too many people that are not having the best interests of the people at heart. I think when any company is deeply embedded into a situation where there's not consequence for particular actions that may be taken, I think it's a dangerous thing. We as a community should expect, again, that our children have fresh air, fresh water, that we're focused on that every single day. Self-policing, I would agree with Mr. Lieberman that it doesn't always work in situations of large corporations.
Thank you. Then last question. State officials submitted a plan to the EPA on new power plant emission rules that many groups believe are designed to be obstructionist since previous General Assemblies already had the state on a path toward compliance. Is this a reasonable action when public health is involved? This is simply a yes or no question. Ms. Rivas?
Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Absolutely. State officials submitted a plan to the EPA on new power plant emission rules that many groups are designed to be obstructionist since previous General Assemblies already had the state on a path toward compliance. Is this a reasonable action when public health is involved? And we are actually going to allow you both to expand on this question.
I don't think so. I mean, I think when we're headed on a path that could have helped solve some of the issues and we retract that, and I would afford that we all need to understand more as to why it got derailed and why some of the plans that were previously put in place didn't get put into action. We all need to have accountability towards that.
Thank you. And Mr. Lieberman?
I agree. I think that in this case, we were headed on the right track. We need to make sure that we're working with the federal government, just as the state government needs to make sure it's working with local governments to secure the best quality of living it can for the residents of this state.
And thank you. It is now time for our 30-second closing statements, and we will begin with Mr. Lieberman.
Well, first off, I'd like to thank WTVI and the League of Women Voters again for hosting this debate, as well as everybody who watched at home. Tonight, you've heard me lay out a series of proposals to solve the issues facing our state on education, jobs. But the important thing is that these proposals don't come from me. They come from you, the voters of this district, because I'm not running for me. I'm running for you. I'm running to make government work and bring your voice back to Raleigh.
Thank you, Mr. Lieberman. And Ms. Rivas?
Thank you. And again, thank you for everybody that took the time to listen to these very important issues today. I asked for your vote simply for the fact that I am an experienced business leader. I understand how to make things happen when people don't necessarily agree. I'm a mom of two, and I have a vested interest in the future of this state based on where I live, where I work, and where I spend my time. This is an opportunity right now to make change. And there's an opportunity for us as regular citizens, as I was and I am today, just like every politician started out to be, to make change and stick to the things that we said we were going to do.
Again, we do want to say thank you to each of the Democratic candidates in the North Carolina House District 103 race for taking part in this debate. The winner of the Democratic primary will face Republican Bill Brawley in the November general election. For more information on the League of Women Voters Charlotte-Mecklenburg, go to www.goleaguego.org. Please remember to cast your vote. The primary will be held on Tuesday, March 15th.